Every now and again, we do need to get away from it all, don't we? That tear-away modern life is often a bit too much, a bit of a bore. How nice to forget about it once in a while and drift back into the past. It's not very far away, just over the bridge and beyond the hedge, and you're there. You are back in the dear dead days when the pace of life was controlled by the pace of the horse. Just about this pace. When our canals carried a tremendous bulk of this rich country's merchandise. They were carefully planned and dug for that purpose. The easiest way of moving about 20 tons of stuff was with one horse and a barge. And we used our canals until the trains came and the lorries came, and then we chucked them away. Well, not quite. We all but chucked them away. And now we are finding out what a wonderful life was the life on the old canals. So, don't let's waste any more time. Let's move off. Are you ready, Ned? You haven't dozed off, have you? Me? No. Good. Come on, then. Follow the towpath. Who knows what we'll find? Ah, do you find that hard? No, not too bad. Good. There's just room for two in this lock. It doesn't take long for the water to ooze away, and we're off on a cruise in a narrow boat. This is one of the old narrow boats, built to slip through narrow locks and tunnels, built to carry a nation's goods. Once pulled by a single horse, but now converted to a comfortable floating hotel and thumped along by 50 horses through the same old scenery of 100 years ago. This old boat knows it well. The pointed spires still prick the sky. The ragged weeds still tatter the banks. This old boat knows them well. The ruffled reeds still shiver in the ripples that this old boat left a lifetime ago. It's still the same. Still the same. Yeah, so's this blinking bridge. You've got to wind and wind and wind and wind and wind and wind. Thank you very much. That is kind of you. We'll be as quick as we can, and then you can let it down again. It's still the same. So's that old guillotine lock. It's incredible when you come to think of it that we built canals all over this country. Canals running north and south, east and west. Canals that went uphill and down dale. Canals that took ships uphill and downhill by using the simple method of locks. It's all so beautifully simple, isn't it? Apart from the great practical advantage of having a network of waterways, just think of the fun the chaps had when they designed these gentle highways. Playing with water on a grand scale, using an element that is only too ready to be used. Good, old-fashioned water. And it's still the same today. It's still the same. Yeah, you've still got to wind and wind and wind and wind. Oh, thank you very much. That's all right. I quite like playing with water, really. I know. Don't we all? There's a great deal of difference between the character of a canal and the character of a river. Rivers have always attracted the pleasure seekers, the holiday makers, the picnickers, the boaters, the swimmers. Canals were always serious places of work. They were organized and somber. Not a lot of laughter ever trickled here, but now their seriousness has turned to a quiet benevolence, a perfect place to relax, and you can still travel the old-fashioned way if you like. Oh, do come on, Ned. You're taking a blinking long time.
Well, I got trouble with me blinking blinkers or something. I don't know.
Oh, do come on.
Don't you worry, mate. I'll have that barge moving quicker than you could start an engine there. Oh, how's that? And I don't freeze up like engines do in winter. And I cost next to nothing to run. And I'll tell you another thing.
Shh, quiet, Ned. Shh. Can't you see the man's fishing? Shh, quiet, dear. Can't you see the man's fishing? What man? Oh, yes, that one there. Oh, yes. Shh, don't disturb the fish.
No, don't disturb the fish. And I'll tell you what, don't disturb me either.
We'll try not to. But a quiet old horse and a quiet old barge disturbs nothing but the bottle green glaze of the old canal. To think that we almost let these lazy summer delights slip through our fingers. But not quite. There are still miles and miles of canals that you can glide through easily, gently. Perhaps a little faster than old Ned, but you can hire a cruiser if you want to do that. The nice thing about canals is that they don't run dead straight, as some people believe. They don't go as the crow flies. Ha ha! I've flown some pretty crooked courses in my time. Of course you have. You see, you'll always come to a bend with a fresh and lovely aspect. It's almost too good to be true, isn't it? If you want peace, you'll find it here. If you want quiet, you'll find it here. If you want to glide in a dark green dream, you'll do it here. If you want a bubble with a new sensation, you'll discover it here. Look, there's the sparkling River Dee, as playful a piece of water as you'd wish to find anywhere. And the chaps that played with water found that they somehow had to cross this reckless bit of freelance water with a canal of well-controlled and ordered water. So they built this aqueduct. Well, the Romans built aqueducts. Nothing new in that. No, but not aqueducts to carry boats. It's an outrageous thing to do, isn't it? Almost worthy of some high-wire circus performer. But it's perfectly safe. And you needn't look down, but you can't help it. Who would have thought that a stodgy old Victorian canal could dish itself up in such a dramatic lump of landscape as this? A dull old canal? Huh. A glorious, hilarious thrill. Once you solve the problem of a canal crossing a river, then a canal crossing another canal should be child's play. Yeah, but of course, the aqueduct had got the great advantage of already being at a high level. Here, the two canals are practically at the same level. So what do? Well, it's obvious. You make a swing bridge and fill it with water. This sort of invention is almost cheeky, isn't it? A canal that you can swing around to cross another canal. If the canals had gone on developing up to the present day, using modern methods and inventions, goodness knows what games the water boys would have played. But this is good enough to be getting on with. A bridge for lorries over there, and a bridge for boats here. It's almost a joke. But these children think nothing of it. They live on the narrow boats. There are not many of them left, are there? No, not many. We're the last. The last of the many families who lived their lives on the narrow boats. A life that was a highly individual life with its own customs and folklore. its own traditional decorations, a separate life, an almost secret life that slipped around the back of great cities and did things that the rest of the world had no idea about. Well, look at this thing. Here you have a canal at two levels, one down here, one up there. The problem is not how to get one over the other, anybody can do that, it's how to lift a barge out of one canal and slide it into the other. Well, you simply float it into a compartment and send it up or down like a lift. There was no limit to the inventiveness of the water boys. Of course, you need a fair bit of machinery to do this. This is the great Anderton lift. It cost 1 shilling per boat to go either up or down the Anderton lift, and then a further penny per ton after that. So a boat carrying 25 tons would have to pay just 37 pennies to get itself hauled up or dropped down from one level to another. Nowadays it costs just £2 single or £3 return for a cruiser. Cheap at half the price. No doubt the Anderton lift will go on working for some time to come. But its original use of lifting the old narrow boats is almost done. The narrow boats are fast fading away, along with the people who've lived on them and worked them all their lives. But the canals, mercifully, are still with us, many of them. Still with us for us to enjoy, to take our leisure and our ease, just whenever we feel we need to get away from it all.
From early days, man has always built his towns on river banks, thus giving him easy means of transport. As time went on, industries were started, and rivers once again played an important part in their development. As man's ingenuity grew, he conceived the idea of making artificial waterways to link up with other towns and rivers in every part of the country. Many of our early canals were made from the Roman ditches, but it was the Duke of Bridgewater who first devised a scheme popularizing their use. With the help of James Brindley, a brilliant engineer, who could neither read nor write, canals were constructed which connected the Humber, Thames, Severn and Mersey. At this point, the canal branches off from the tidal river, and these large seagoing barges, too big for the canals, congest the entrance to the basin where goods are transshipped to smaller vessels before continuing their journey. To help them along past the gate which cuts off the canal from the river, a hydraulic capstan is used. This job looks simple enough, but it requires skill to seize the right moment to take the strain, and the tauntauning rope could easily break a man's ribs. Canals were first constructed to carry coal, but nowadays they transport every kind of merchandise, relieving the roads and railways and leaving them clear to carry war materials. With natural curiosity, British bees sample a consignment of West Indian honey, dew, and much to the annoyance of the dockers. Strolling down the wharf, we see that other goods are being unloaded from boats. The clanking of cranes and the shouts from the foreman tell us that the canals are busy again delivering the goods. Soon the holds are empty, but without a pause they are filled with new cargoes. The merchants of Birmingham, Leeds and Manchester must not be kept waiting for their goods in these days, and within a few hours the barges are ready to set off on another trip. Crafts start their journey chugging along the winding waterway. Even the smoke-grimed city has a new charm, and the unusual angle of familiar buildings from the canal's path presents a fascinating scene to the visitor. As we sweep round the bend, the vista changes, and the many bridges, flanked by buildings down to the water's edge, give the scene an almost un-English atmosphere, reminding us of those picturesque canals which flow over Europe. Along the banks, fishermen gather, dreaming no doubt in the tranquil surroundings of much bigger fish than those playing round their lines. Soon the view changes once again. We are heading for the open country, and the high buildings have given way to rows of graceful trees. A famous Frenchman truthfully said that London owes much of its charm to the fact that every street has at least one tree. And that can be said of all our canals, however urban. Resuming our journey, we drift down a peaceful avenue of plane trees in their full summer glory. At last, the narrow waterway broadens out at the junction where three arms of the canal run. Here, the barges make their way to the gauging shed before continuing their journey. The foreman knows the capacity of every barge and the depth to which they are loaded. A gauge is taken at each corner to ensure that they are carrying the correct weight and not overloaded. Gauging finished, the barges make for the open country, where they are free to travel at full speed, away from the congested waterways of the city. Man's faithful friend, the horse, is still at work along the towpaths, pulling the larger barges over short distances. For this work, they need many years of training, and the horse's task is not so simple as it may appear. Too sudden tension on a slack rope has been known to pull a horse into the water, and so he must know when to pull his load slowly. But most modern barges have oil engines and are capable of a speed of more than 10 miles an hour, though such a speed would tear down the banks with the wash. These inland craft fit neatly into the typical English scene, and for all their commercial purpose, add to its charm as they move in and out of the dappled sunlight. Bargees are a community on their own, living their entire lives with their families on the canals. Literally, a floating population of many thousands. Every member of the family helps in handling the boat. Many of the older generation can neither read nor write, but at certain points, special schools have been provided for the youngsters. The barges mainly travel in pairs, the motor vessel towing the buffet, as the second one is called, and carrying a combined load of some 50 tons. Accidents are almost unheard of, and canal transport today is the cheapest, most reliable, and frequently a quicker mode of conveyance than rail. The quaint, winding water lanes are kept narrow to conserve the water, and the stream has to be constantly supplied. The long, level stretches are linked by locks. and were it not for these, the mileage would often be doubled. Here, the women do their share of the work, opening the gate while the man opens the sluice. This simple process of sailing uphill was not discovered until 1480 and made the whole canal system possible. Locks are kept as small as possible to save water, and neat steering is necessary to avoid damaging the gates. The sluice at the other end is open to allow the lock to fill up and the gate is closed. Although the level may have to rise or drop 12 feet or more, this operation takes little over a minute, though many locks have to be negotiated on a single trip. Soon they are able to move on again, and labour are expended in the efficient running of our canals, and at frequent intervals along the waterway, repair centres are situated to keep the banks in constant repair. Here we see a sturdy oak on its way to the sawmill. This wood is used for building the massive lock gates, and in spite of the hard usage and pressure of the water, they last for 25 years, which speaks well for these craftsmen. But in spite of the sturdiness of these lock gates, they occasionally require attention. A slack period is chosen and the repair party gets to work. The first job is damming off the gates with stout planks, and the men have to exert all their strength to sink them into position. The sluice gates are then opened and the water falls rapidly. The dog is more interested in rats. The repair gang have to work quickly in their workshop and locate the plank which leads through. Meanwhile, a few barges have appeared, but they will have to wait for the new wood to be tarred and nailed into position. The lock is soon refilled and the pressure of the water knocks up the planks as the level is reached. The bargee's well-earned rest is over and once more the canal comes to life. But all canals are not constructed to carry barges, and here we get a glimpse of the famous Manchester Ship Canal, which links the city with the port of Liverpool. This huge enterprise was started in 1885 by Daniel Adamson, who foresaw the possibilities of making Manchester a port, thus giving her two vast industries, coal and cotton, an outlet. Meetings were held with the Lancashire manufacturers, who ultimately gave the scheme their support. Over £9 million was raised, and in less than 10 years, the canal, 35 miles long, was opened for use by Her Majesty Queen Victoria. As on smaller canals, the construction of locks was necessary at several points to make the scheme possible. The hard-working little tugs nimbly tow the large ocean-going ships neatly through the gates of the gigantic locks, which accommodate vessels of 15,000 tons, dwarfing the countryside beyond them. Here the gates are electrically controlled, and powerful pumps force in thousands of gallons of water from below, the whole operation only taking a matter of minutes. This canal is the busiest in the country, and throughout the day vessels pass to and fro, bringing their valuable cargoes to Manchester. Double locks have been built so that there is no delay, and the waterway is wide enough for two ships to pass each other. massive lock is filled and the gates part, allowing the ship to glide towards the sea. Further downstream, we reach Barton Bridge, which forms a gate to the city of Manchester. And here we pause to see the unique spectacle of the British Water Canal. Carried in an aqueduct above the ship canal, thus two waterways cross, yet each works quite independently of the other. The signal of an approach from the control tower, the machinery is set into motion, and slowly the smaller canal swings aside, hardly losing a drop of water. Bankrupt Manchester's cotton trade, and looking through the typical mist, an oncoming ship is seen. Traffic on the roadways stop and the massive bridge swings aside to make room for the mist. Notes down the name of the ship as it slowly glides past the bridge. The decks come level with the smaller canal, making it appear almost like a toy. The ship canal not only puts Manchester in the unique position of being an inland port, but places it as the third largest in the country and has contributed considerably to the commercial importance of the city. Vast docks cover a wide area and provide berthing space for hundreds of ships which daily defy attacks from the enemy and come from every corner of the globe. Much of the foodstuffs and raw materials from America find their way to this busy port, besides raw materials from the local trades, all presenting scenes of bustling activity which continue throughout the day. Here is an example of the ingenuity and skill of our engineers and the enterprise of our industrialists who have successfully carried out the ambitious plan for the benefit of Manchester. Along the waterfront, powerful cranes swing the cargoes from the hold, and here again we see something of the Mancunian skill. These cranes are fitted with a special remote control device invented by a dock foreman, which considerably speeds up unloading. The use of a portable switch enables the operators to swing loads from the ship to waiting lorries with a nicety which was impossible by the older method. For many years, the canals suffered through the competition of more modern means of transport, but today they have come into their own again, and nearly 3,000 miles of navigable canals are relieving the congested lines and sidings of the railway. Thus, these inland boatmen, with typical determination, are making the canals of Britain play their part in the united effort.
This is the home of commerce and industry. It is the birthplace of fad and fashion, a kaleidoscope of life in the fast lane. This is England. This is also England. History and heritage, the ancient land of knights and kings, poets and saints. Here the mists of legend flow powerfully into the present. This green and pleasant land is a fertile ground for the creative spirit. Shakespeare, Milton, Wordsworth. This is where man's first factories grew into an industrial revolution, where the clatter of horses' hooves on cobblestones gave way to the metallic roar of traffic. Today's traveler, careening through canyons of concrete and steel, with connections defined in minutes, can find an oasis in our 20th century, just across a crowded street, behind a building, beneath a bridge. Always within reach of modern man's whirlwind life are tranquil vestiges of a long ago yesterday. For over 200 years, a second England has lain secluded within the very heart of Great Britain. This is the world of the Inland Waterways, one of the oldest and most extensive canal systems in the world. Every person in the Western world owes something to it, for the English canals helped to make possible the Industrial Revolution, without which our modern world would be unrecognizable. Indeed, all of modern industry and technology has its roots in the heart of the English Midlands, whose arteries are her rivers and canals. Although they now often lie just a few feet away from freeways and modern office buildings, they are rarely seen by the casual traveler. Even to the people living nearby, their history is as mysterious as the early morning mists that shroud them. For the average person living in early 18th century Britain, life was much as it had been for centuries. His world was one of medieval isolation. The local village had to provide all of life's needs. However, history is always a story of change. In 1709, coke, a product of coal, was first used to smelt iron ore in the Midlands. The textile industry began a series of dramatic improvements. Entrepreneurs like Josiah Wedgwood were making strides in the development of pottery and other domestic products. But the inland transportation of raw materials and finished goods invariably involved the hazards of crude, unpaved roads. At best, it was inefficient and risky. By the middle of the 18th century, the essential elements for industrial revolution were in place. Only an efficient transportation system was needed to begin a process that would change the world. Although boats avoided the problems of the early roads, Britain's rivers were navigable only partway inland. Canals could provide the ideal transportation between the factory and the marketplace, and it was the pound lock that made this possible, enabling a canal to cross hills and valleys. An excellent example which can be seen today is the Flight of Hatton locks. It lowers the Grand Union Canal 146 feet to Warwick. The pound lock is a simple system that remains essentially the same today. A boat enters a lock chamber and the gates are closed behind it. Valves called paddles are opened either to fill or empty the chamber. Thus bringing the boat to the next level of the canal. Gates on the other end of the lock are then opened for the boat to exit. Canal technology was the catalyst. The Duke of Bridgewater was the man. As the owner of coal mines near Manchester, he saw great potential in lowering his transportation costs through an inland waterway system. His first canal began operation at these mines in 1761. By dramatically reducing transportation costs, this canal cut the price of coal in Manchester by 1/2. This success caught the imagination of the public and opened what became known as the Canal Age. James Brindley, engineer of the Bridgewater Canal, went on to link the Midlands with several of England's major rivers. Early construction was simple and unencumbered, following the contours of the land. This resulted in a meandering route. Later engineers constructed more direct routes. These were more expensive, but more efficient canals. Thomas Telford, the most prominent of the later engineers, began his canal engineering work at the height of canal construction. He introduced a new sophistication and elegance to canal architecture. This aqueduct in Wales is an excellent example of the new technological daring of his day. These works stand today as evidence of their optimism and engineering skill. In 1804, Thomas Telford had begun work on the Caledonian Canal in Scotland. This canal enabled seagoing vessels to navigate across the width of Scotland. Although never an economic success, for the first time it demonstrated the practicality of constructing a seaway across a landmass. Canal projects required authorization from Parliament, but the companies were privately owned and operated. By the end of the 18th century, a canal mania had captured the imagination of the British people. Every community saw the advantages of a canal. Fortunes were being made, and speculation in still more projects flourished. Everyone wanted a piece of the action. Canal construction transformed the countryside. In the 1790s, about 50,000 workers were involved, extending the canal navigation throughout the country. These laborers became known as navvies. With picks, shovels, and horse-drawn carts, they forever changed the British landscape. By 1850, the canal system had reached its greatest extent, over 3,500 miles. By painfully slow methods, tunnels were bored to lengths of over 3 miles. Some tunnels were too narrow to include a towpath. Men had to lie on their backs and leg the boats through by walking on the walls.
I've heard my father say that he used to be a legger through the tunnel, and they legged them through with their feet, you see, through the laying on the backs and just walking through the tunnel.
This is a standard English canal narrowboat. It is a bit over 71 feet long and 7 feet wide.
There were various types of canal boat in this country. The earliest ones, of course, were all wood, because wood was the only material available. Later on, there were iron composite ones, that is iron with wooden bottoms, and later on, all iron ones. The sides are oak, built onto iron frames. Some of them were built onto wooden frames, or knees as they're called. A plank such as we got on the fore end there, you've got about 20 minutes to half an hour to get it round to the shape you want it and actually fastened up.
These boats were built to fit locks 7 feet 2 inches wide and 72 feet long. These narrow boats were originally pulled by horses on a towpath beside the canal. Diesel engines eventually replaced the horse. Within 19th century English society, a unique subculture developed around the canals. The crew was usually an entire family. They lived on board and raised their children to be the next crew.
Because running a pair of boats is not a one-man job, it's a family job.
There's nearly always a man and his wife and the family. They lived entirely on the boats. They were born on the boats and died on the boats, most of them.
Now you can make a cabin a most comfortable place because it's so close. There's everything to your hand.
Almost square, you know, 7 to 8 foot long and 7 foot wide.
Lived in those cramped quarters. How they used to do it, I don't know.
I have 21 children. They was all born on the canal. I was born 54 years ago on a canal boat at Cow Lane Wharf, Chester. Most of the canal children went through without any education at all.
Usually, of course, when the children began to get older, they'd take a boat or a couple of boats of their own, and then they would follow father and mother to see, make a kind of a family affair of it.
There wasn't very much courting attached to it, apart from asking how well you were and else when you passed each other on the way. And you was lucky if you met up with each other at a discharging point where you unloaded and loaded your boats again.
Keep your hands off, that's mine. You just be careful what you do. That little bit of fancy work, it doesn't belong to you. But she's a nice girl, I know, and she squeezes absolutely fine. You can do just what you like with any other fella's wife, but keep your hands off, that's mine.
They was real smart with their corduroy trousers, with the bell bottoms and the velvet seams and the diamond stitching, the white cotton handmade shirts with the feather red stitching all down the front. And then, of course, the women, they always wore an apron, and then with a sort of a bonnet. It come right down with a shoulder piece, more like a cape. When the number ones had their boats, they used to go and get their boat painted up better than to beat the other fella. Just the same with the old traditional rope work, you see. And then later on, that fella, he'd say to his wife, "Oh, good gracious, Sarah, we mustn't let him get away with that, you know." They would see who could get the best turnout of brasses and crochet ear caps. Even the nose tins that they used to carry to feed their horse would be painted in the old traditional style with the roses and diamonds all around and a brass buckle polished up, all to match the harness.
The first canals were built in the Manchester area. And round about Manchester there was a lot of gypsies who lived in caravans. They was traditionally decorated with roses and castles. The gypsies worked the boats, being used to the travelling life, sort of a nomad life, you know. And also they transferred their painting to the boats.
It's very stylised. You've got different styles in different boatyards. Some people just paint one petal formation for all the roses, you know, like one big petal and two this way or whatever. The easier it looks, the more stylised it is, and the more reason there is, because it was sort of maximum effect for minimum effort.
And on the canals we find we live with nature, and nature lives with us, and we love it.
Despite some changes, the narrow boats and life on the canals remained much as they had been for more than a century. From 1790 to 1840, the canals were the primary transportation system for Britain's industry. These were the first crucial decades of the Industrial Revolution. In 1830, George Stephenson had demonstrated the superior speed and efficiency of rail transportation. During the next 20 years, 6,600 miles of track were laid in Britain, and the railroad began to dominate. 1865 was the first year of actual decline in freight carried on the canals. By 1900, it was clear that narrowboat transportation would not keep pace with 20th century industry.
The fact that they were built narrow in the first place really was one of the nails in the coffin that finally brought about the demise of commercial carrying, because it was impossible to carry a commercial load. The most they could ever carry was something like 25, 27 tons. And as the canal silted up anyway, it became impossible to carry even that much. And today, you'd be lucky to carry 12 or 15 tons on the same boat, because you'd be on the bottom all the time.
They say canals are finished now, they want the cup to die. It's more than any man can tell to know the reason why. And while they take our homes from us, our working boats and loads, 6,000 corpses every year lie bleeding on the road. The paddle gear is hard to draw, they let the lock gates leak. The ponds are filling up with mud and getting worse each week. The dredging boats and piling gangs but work in bits and parts. Our brasses and our fainted boats to hide our breaking hearts.
Today there is a renaissance of activity on the canals. For thousands of people each year, they are a unique link with the past. The canals have become a living museum of natural history and our industrial heritage. In 1948, most of the canals were nationalized. Today, the waterways are maintained by the British Waterways Board. In some areas, derelict canals are being restored by independent groups of canal enthusiasts. Although commercial traffic has almost entirely disappeared from the narrow canals, many of the traditions of canal life still remain. Today's narrow boats follow the original designs of a century ago, but are fully equipped with modern conveniences, hot and cold running water, showers, and complete kitchens. Many of these houseboats are rented by vacationers on a weekly basis. They can be driven anywhere on the Inland Waterways. Another tradition still maintained today is the leisurely pace of life which has always been a part of the canals. Boats travel through the countryside at a walking speed. There is ample time to stroll through villages and stop at canal-side pubs. A personal sense of discovery awaits around each bend. For the Duke of Bridgewater, the canals were a daring business venture. They now provide a quiet spectacle of the unexpected, a peaceful afternoon for fishing, even during the busiest workday. A sense of rural isolation just outside a bustling city center. Cruising on a modern canal boat offers a unique waterborne viewpoint of a relatively unknown second England.
You see more from a canal than from the road. Local people can help you tremendously by pointing out where these little spots hide themselves.
The canals penetrate the very heart of England. For today's traveler, they are a living, working monument to a bygone age of wonder and invention. A time before cars and trains when nothing ran faster than a horse.
Johnson's Pottery Works had a factory in Milton. They also had a factory in Hanley. After many years, they suddenly realised that they'd got this facility of using the canal to link the two factories.
A trip on the canals will go through cities along routes established nearly 2 centuries ago. Following these original trade routes laid out by Brindley, Telford, and other civil engineers of their time is to retrace the paths of our recent history. to see those first connections between factory and mine, field and market. Even the early machinery can still be experienced. It may not always be cooperative, but these minor challenges are all a part of the adventure.
From a narrowboat, you can see England the way it should be seen, at a walking pace. The areas along the canals are rich with England's history. You don't miss the fine points as you go by.
The pastoral smells and sounds. I like to see the dew rising off the fields early in the morning, and I particularly enjoy hearing the church bells. We picked a lot of blackberries and wild raspberries. One morning we were able to find some mushrooms growing in the field, and we sliced them up and had them for breakfast. And it was rather nice too to be able to get goat's milk and fresh eggs from the neighboring farms along the side of the canal.
It's fascinating to see the old factories lining the canals and realize that these are the remnants of the very first industries ever, and yet be cruising alongside them in a boat with all the modern conveniences.
I recall some of the most beautiful evenings when we would moor our boat for the night and before the sun went down.
The setting in total was so awakening to our senses.
With every little turn that we would make in that canal, we would be constantly surprised by the variety of animal life that existed along the banks of the water.
Ah, yes, the animals. On the canals, evidence of Britain's rich history abounds. From Iron Bridge corners deeply rutted by the tow ropes of horse-drawn boats, to Holy Trinity Church in Stratford, where Shakespeare lies. Oxford, where the canal system joins the River Thames. Warwick Castle, where through the centuries the Earls of Warwick wielded their tremendous power over the British realm. In Scotland, there is more to Loch Ness than its traditional image of mystery and isolation. It is part of the Caledonian Canal, which interconnects several freshwater lakes. Cutting through the beautiful Great Glen of Scotland, this was Thomas Telford's massive project designed to give ships an alternative to the treacherous waters of the North Sea. However, it took almost 50 years to complete, and by then, most ships were too large for the locks. Today, smaller seagoing vessels share the locks with holidaymakers. In the rush of today, it is still possible to experience much of Britain from the deck of a boat. On the canals, there is a special kind of romance where the past lives within the present. It is a unique adventure in our frantically paced lives, not only to visit, but to live for a time in the world of a century ago. In this, a most civilized adventure, there is time for everything, and on the canals, time has always been measured in centuries.